First, thank you for the invitation. It was not a pretty long way to go to Bastard, but it was really a very different space, very different sounds as I have to have at home. You can read that. Bamberg is a World Heritage town, a pretty small town, 70,000 inhabitants, small streets, small housing and all this, and you come to this place and there is just space and you have the water all the day long and all these things. It's pretty beautiful and exhausting. So, as you already mentioned, thank you for that. I want to talk about the census in architecture and, well, how to make the census work that fine that even for people afflicted with dementia, there would be a good picture or a good feeling for the environment. You can see at this drawing that, of course, all the census, and I will mention there are really not only five, but we'll come to that later, are giving you, well, a pretty good picture, a pretty good feeling for environment. I'll go through with you the next, I think, 25 minutes. Cognitive impairment and dementia, worst case hospitals, and then what to do now. As we heard from, I think it was Jens who told us half an hour ago, that it's pretty easier to speak about seeing than about hearing. So, because I'm not an acoustician, as you know, I will talk about the sensory changes, sight, hearing, touch, smell and taste, especially about seeing things. We know that that the physical abilities change as well. So the mobility, the strength, dexterity, and the mental abilities changes as well. As you know, you can read that. Oh, I'm sorry. I've got it here on the screen, but not there. I hope it works now. So the mental abilities changes as well. Memory, the processing of information, reactions and coordinations. I read such a suit a year ago and it was really astonishing how you feel when you don't see the things correctly, when you can't behave like you want to behave, when you think everything is very hard to do. So if somebody wants to try that, there are a lot of possibilities to get such a suit and try how it really feels. So I want to go to these things pretty fast. I only want to remember you that there are changes in all the senses, so taste and smell, giving you less information about the environment, about where you are, for example, when you don't smell wood or something like that. There, of course, are changes in touch, vibration and pain because the skin is changing with age. So the sun, the wind, the heat, the cold, the skin is not that thick anymore. There is a poor blood circulation and all these things, well, always with the same result. There is less information. So you can't feel, for example, hot or cold that good as you could do in former times or when you've been younger. And then this was the thing with seeing, which for me as an architect was primarily pretty interesting. And that's why I'm talking a bit about that now. There are a lot of diseases, you can read that, but not the thing which is the most interesting today. We have to think about what really happened then and what you really can see when you have all these changes. For example, there is a AMD, age-related macular degeneration, and it's coming more and more. It afflicts more and more elder people. You know what it means. At this Amsler grid, you can see that things you focus on just gets grayer and dizzy, and you only see, for example, when I look at you, I can't see your nose, your eyes, your mouth, but I see your hair or something like that. So it's pretty difficult, especially for people with the dementia on top, to handle with that. Then the size of the pupil reduces with age. That means that the surroundings seem darker. Means for me as an architect, we have to think about lighting. Due to reception in size, the depth of field is poorly regulated. You see it on these dots, what it really means. So the need for light is increasing because the transmission properties of the lens are reduced, and we don't know. We know now that we don't know. We don't need only more light, but we need more blue light because all the red things are filtered out because of the proteins in the lens. Light, of course, has a biological function as well. But when you look at these things, I was invited in Dubai to look at this Saudi German hospital. You can easily understand that there is, in this building, there is not enough light, and to go outside, it's really not inviting. And these are the things we often are fighting with when coming to hospitals when they are already built. Then we had to think about color vision, but that was mentioned half an hour ago as well. We know that the colors green, blue, and violet fade. Yellow, orange, red remain easy to distinguish, and that means something for your 3D perception. Look at this. I hope everybody sees something a bit nearer and something a bit more far away. So what's about the blue color? Do you think it's nearer or do you think it's far away? Yeah. So this is the usual thing, and that gives you an information about the 3D of the room. Or if you're standing on a hill looking, well, in the landscape, everything seems to be more bluish, and then you know, oh, it seemed to be far away. But when you can't see it like we do it now, there's less information. So knowing all that, knowing that there is a reduced visual resolution, the increasing glaring effects, reduced color vision, reduced sensitivity to contrasts, loss of peripheral vision, and a central visual loss, you just wondering why we are still building things like that, because it's really obvious that it makes a difference when you have a building white in white. You won't see where the rooms end, where they start. You as specialists in acoustics think you can already hear what it could sound like in these environments. But we are thinking about hygienics and all these things, mostly. So all the things about hearing, I think I can go through pretty quickly because these are just the facts you all know. You have had this quote yesterday, I'm sorry. But I think it really is very interesting to think about the theme that the architects, so my colleagues and me, haven't really recognized that acoustics is such a big problem, and it really is something which can be changed pretty easily when you're thinking. Best thing, of course, before you build the environment. I've been to Sydney visiting this hospital there, and they told me it's a pretty good thing. It's wonderful. It's an open space. There are some shops in it and a cafeteria and all these things. But you enter this place and you think it's an awful place. I don't want to stand it, and I want to get out of this hospital at once. So you make two steps in this house and say, oh, no, 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 it's not mine. But it's, well, the lighting is perfect. The idea of making such a mall in the house is perfect. But acoustically, it really is a blame. It's horrible. And then, of course, there are a lot of other things. When you think about seeing, you think, for example, this is wet there. The floor is just, well, you may fall. So a lot of things really just don't work. We know that the perception of environment is about 85% visual and about 10% auditory with the healthy adults. But we know as well that when the people get dementia on top, this would be changing. Being hard of hearing limits, of course, communication skills, but you've heard that already. It means limited awareness, and especially not knowing where sounds come from results in insecurity. You saw the quote there from Mary Marshall. Noise to a person with dementia is like stairs to a wheelchair user. And I think you can imagine sitting there, having stairs, not being able to get up there because your frame doesn't want to go up with you. So it's really a torture to be in these environments. But we know even silence can be a torment. And when you think about all these census and see the hospital buildings, for example, this corridor in a clinic nearby Munich, it's on top of that your body doesn't feel how he behaves in this environment. So he gets not enough information with all the senses, and well, always causes a feeling of being insecure. And a real problem is that there are a lot of falls, and of course in hospital, longer length of stay. So as I already told you, when the memory performance gets bad as well, and we know there would be many people being afflicted with dementia the next 10 years, we have to change something. In Germany, we've got 1.5 million affected at the moment, and we expect them to double in the next 20 years. The processing of information works according to the principle last in, first out. And well, you never know at what step or what stage the person afflicted with dementia is. So you can't say, well, he's 80 years old, so build him an environment looking like in the 50s. But perhaps in this mind, he's, well, about 15 years at the moment, because he's always becoming older younger in his own, well, meaning of his own age. So if you're thinking about that and knowing that the people, especially the patients with dementia, have to have the feeling of not understanding the environment, you can easily understand that there would be fear. And when there is fear, there is a tendency to run, there is a tendency towards aggression, there is a tendency towards arousal, and there is a tendency to competence protection. Meaning it's our task to make this blue sea as small as possible, to reduce feeling of fear, to make very clear information about the environment as good as possible. So I think that hospitals are the worst case to be for people with dementia. We had a hospital in Bavaria where they gave us the data, and as you can read, there are 60% of patients over 65. And at the moment in this acute care hospital, there are already 10 to 15% of patients with dementia in non-internal medical wards, and in internal medical wards about 30% of patients diagnosed with a dementia. That means you have to think about that and not think about the theme, well, people with dementia just in a separate ward or I don't know what. I went to the ministry with these thoughts in my head, and the Bavarian Ministry of Care said, well, could be interesting, but it's not our theme. We are thinking about hygienics and all these things. So my students went into 15 hospitals in Bavaria and asked nurses and carers. The nurses and carers said, well, there are a lot of problems, malnourishing, falls and injuries, anxiety, and all these things. The doctor said, well, there could be a problem, but it's not worse. So the people who are around the patients all day long and all night long know what happened, and the others will are not informed. But I think it's a current crisis, especially in our German hospitals. Perhaps in your countries it's in a different way, or it's better than we are doing or we're behaving. And you see that there is a crisis because the carers do a lot of things which are really pretty difficult, and I think they are forced to walk a fine line. So they place patients into vests, they create barriers, disguise the doors, or sedate the patient. So there are financial considerations the hospitals are not really thinking about. I think in most of the other countries it is like in Germany, we have a dual financial system to pay for the hospital, meaning that the state is paying for the building and the insurance or the persons themselves are will have to pay for the running costs. So it's pretty difficult to get these two thinkings together. And at the moment, I think it's a problem, especially for the patients, that we don't. These two groups don't really speak to each other. And I think perhaps, and this is what I wanted to hear from you then afterwards, the seeing could be perhaps something like hearing. We know that that the world is falling into pieces for people with dementia. So, for example, at this situation, it was in a hospital in Berlin. A woman said, "I won't walk through this graveyard." So she's gonna see the darker thing much deeper than the brighter things. Or my mother-in-law, who is afflicted with dementia, said, "There are shards of glass. I can't walk through this room." And if you, for example, look at this, it was in Australia, in Melbourne, in an elder aged facility. Well, they tried to make a camouflage that the people don't see that there is the emergency exit. But I think everybody of these people should think, "Oh, a promenade, I would like to go to this place." So we are just not really knowing what to do. And I think, well, what the elderly are asking for is pretty clear: independence, participation, and identity. But it's pretty easy, but it's pretty difficult to us to know what to do for them, because they can't express themselves that good. So I think there are three columns we have to think about. It's the organizational development. Of course, it's not my theme. There is education from staff, family, and all the people who are around them. And then, and this is our theme, we have to, well, make a prosthetic environment with the modules of lighting, color, acoustic, design, signage, and all these things. So there are a few keystones, and we know they really work. It's lighting with a visual function, with an emotional function, with a biological function. There is color known as a barrier. You already saw the photographs. Color for orientation and color for well-being. We know what elder people really love to have. They love to have the warmer colors, because the others, they perhaps can't see that fine anymore. I show you a pretty easy example with the bathroom, because it's really a need to find the toilet, of course. And when you look at this, it was a new bathroom in a clinic in Bamberg, in a hospital in Bamberg. They thought, well, make a few nice files there, that it doesn't look like a hospital. And when you forget your glasses or something like that, it's looking like that. People with dementia will forget what they wanted to do in this room. And if you mark it like that, you know, oh, there's the toilet, there's the flush, and all these things. So it could be pretty easy, and I'm asking you whether it could be that easy with hearing as well. I don't know. And some things with these markings did work very well, others did not. If somebody is interested, I can tell him afterwards what was really good working and what was not working at all. So another keystone is the design and signage. We have to look after familiarity, functionality, and hygienics, of course. We did a lot of studies, for example, with these tabs. It was quite funny. The students are laughing a lot because there are differences between men and women, but that would be another story. Finding the toilet, so, is a pretty good example to telling how make the people feel not losing their competences, because they're finding the toilet. And we ask, for example, what do you see here? My mother-in-law say, because she's a basketball fan, this is a basketball. Doesn't even see that it's a human being, perhaps. These are vases. They don't know what this is. This is a man and a woman, but nothing had to do with finding a toilet. This was just too glary and shimmering. They don't know what that could be. And the best thing was this one. So showing that you have to build a very, very clear and not complicated environment that people really know what happens. So there is the last keystone for today, acoustics, of course, for communication, for noise limitation, and for orientation. And we did a small thing in Munich at the university hospital. It was with Ecophone, thanks to Ingrid Fuchs. um, the students went through the house and making just a kind of noise map. So they're only measuring decibels only because they had to have they had to feel where the hotspots of acoustics are in this house. And they came back, and it was the entrance, it was the emergency department, and it was the day clinic for people with dementia. So three things which we really thought it's incredible. And we tried to start to change something at the today. 10 minutes ago, I got the first answers that it really works. We did some acoustic changes in this day clinic, and the nurses and carers give very good notes now. Is it notes? Well, at first it was a 4 or a 3, and now it's a 1 or a 2. And we tried to do something with music because we thought it could be pretty interesting to know more about this theme. Yesterday, one of my colleagues, is he here? Taught us that you're sitting here. Music would be fine for people with dementia, but in our setting, it was not. 20 minutes having a very calm and quiet situation is more relaxing than 20 minutes classical music. And of course, the worst thing was 20 minutes noise from the street. So I think we have to do more. Surgery have to think much more about all these things because we only have very, very small data to speak about that. And then, well, at least I want to tell you something about a conference in Ljubljana I've been 2 weeks ago. It was the conference for the European Alzheimer's Society, and they had the chance to speak with Agnes Houston. I already know that you've already spoken to her as well. And I asked her what's about hearing for people with dementia. She's diagnosed 10 years ago. And she told me, for example, I can be out having a meal. You know, you're in social setting, the noise gets louder and people get more wine with their meal. And it's just like a crescendo. I can't stand it. And I just want to finish the meal and get away. So in Glasgow, I went around restaurants asking for quiet areas. I couldn't understand they had children's areas, but they never had quiet areas. It seemed quite disheartening. Why not have quiet, intimate areas where you can just enjoy the company without all the bombardment of loud music and banging of dishes and noises? Well, that's just what I've thought. Sometimes my family, I think, and friends thought I was becoming strange and I was becoming grumpy and asocial and all that. But it wasn't. It was just my environment wasn't suitable for me, and I didn't know how to behave and how to cope with it. So I think this is a really interesting thing for us all to speak with the people who really can tell us what they are feeling being in environments as we offer them. So this is the last thing. I'm sure we have to enable people to make the best use of any and all of their remaining senses to keep life in balance as long as possible. And I think we must support the people with dementia with fine acoustic environments. And I'm begging you, be a driver for change. So thank you.